Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we can finally talk about the Legacy PDF factions. Now what is a Legacy faction? Well, this means that the Legacy factions are going to have free PDF rules so you don't have to buy a book, but they won't be getting support in the coming future. I know people are disappointed about that, but the rules seem fairly solid. Now the main thing that we have to talk about is, well, just the faction, the roster, the rules, because there's a few changes, and obviously I'm going to be doing the Skaven first, because as many of you guys know, the Skaven are very close to my heart. And from what I've been able to see, the Skaven are still very much the Skaven. Now I don't know exactly when these PDF books are going to be released. I imagine it will be today, or maybe a little bit time in the future. We actually haven't been told as far as I'm aware. All I know is that the embargo is today. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Let's talk about my rats. So we're going to start off with the roster, as a few things have actually changed here. When we go to characters, it's up to 50% as per usual, with 0 to 1 Skaven Warlords or Grey Seers per 1000 points. After which you may have as many Skaven Chieftains, Clan Scryer Warlock Engineers, Clan Eshin Master Assassins, and Clan Pestilence Plague Priests as your heart desires. All pretty good, and you can pretty much have themed armies as far as I've been able to see. I've been writing up some lists myself, and yeah, if you try to push around for a clan, you can do so. Now, let's go into core. Again, 25% of your army must be core, and here is 0 to 1 units of Storm Vermin per 1000 points, plus 1 unit of Clan Rats, they are essential. Then you've got Night Runners, Giant Rats, and Rat Swarms. It's quite nice to see the Giant Rats counting as core options, because a lot of people do like Rat Darts, so there you go. When we go to Special, you can have up to 50% of your army being Special, and that includes as many Gutter Runners, Plague Monks, and Rat Ogres as you want. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of Clan Pestilence, so this actually made me quite happy. And then you can have 0 to 1 unit of Jezzails per Clan Scryer Warlock Engineer taken. So yeah, you need a Warlock Engineer to bring some Jezzails, which is nice and themed. The same thing goes into a Poison Wind Globadier unit. You need a Warlock Engineer to be able to bring a unit of them. It's actually quite interesting, because yeah, there's a lot of love towards Clan Scryer. If we jump into Rare, you can have 25% of your army as this. You can get as many Hell Pit Abominations as you can fit into there. And if your army includes a Clan Scryer Warlock Engineer, once again, you can bring 0 to 1 of the Doom Wheels or the Warp Lightning Cannons, which, yeah, pretty cool. And then lastly, if you have a Plague Priest, you can bring 0 to 1 of Plague Claw Catapults or units of Plague Sensor Bearers. So the more Plague Priests that you have, the more that you can bring, and it is very possible to do a proper army themed on your specific major clan that you might be a big fan of. Overall, it's pretty good. You are missing, of course, the Skaven Slaves, but I wouldn't really call that as a bad thing, mostly because a lot of stuff is much cheaper now. Grey Seers, for example, are 185 points as a level 3, and Clan Rats is still remaining as 4 points, though they do get a little bit more expensive now. If you give them Thrusting Spears and Shields, for example, they are 6 points. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but as a Skaven player, yeah, it's quite large. It's also important to note that weapons teams, pack masters, and master molders still exist with their original function. So you'll be taking the Giant Rats, and you'll have pack masters, you'll be taking Clan Rats, or maybe even, you know, some Storm Vermin, and also bringing in your weapons teams. They're all listed in the army book details. The mount options are pretty much the same, the Screaming Bell and the Plague Furnace. However, we are missing the Bone Breaker, and we are missing the War Litter too. Oh, and the Clan Pestilence Wolf Rat, which is a bit of a shame. Well, Plague Rat. But yeah, I mean, it's still pretty good. Overall, you know, the Screaming Bell gives a 5 upward save to the Grey Seer. The Tolling of the Bell pretty much kind of works the same way, so don't you worry about that. And obviously the same thing with the Plague Furnace, where it reduces enemy toughness around the area. It does some damage, because obviously it's one of those kind of like moving battering rams. What is important to note here, though, is that both of them, both the actual mount options, are on 60 by 100s. Now, what happens is that they're still dragged along, but they're dragged along on the side of a unit rather than on the front, well, in the middle, which is kind of weird, but it kind of makes sense, because obviously Clan Rat's on 25s now, and 25 plus 25 plus 25, you know, that's already past 60. It's one of these things where it's going to take some getting used to. Now, keep in mind that you're still keeping that stuff safe because it's still in the sphere of influence of another unit, so they'll have to focus on the other unit. But yeah, it's still kind of odd. I'm going to be very honest here. Some things should have just actually stayed on 20s. I understand that a lot of things didn't rank up, but like the Skaven were fine. Same thing with the Goblins. It's fine on the 25s because like the footprint is really good. But it just feels odd when it comes into effect with stuff like this. When it comes to special rules, there's not really a lot, so let's talk about them. We've got Poison Wind, so when a model uses a weapon with this special rule, a 6-up is always a success, even if the target's toughness is so high that the weapon would actually not be able to wound it. Finally, no armor save is permitted here, but you can still use Ward and Regeneration as normal, which is pretty good. I kind of like this. I mean, it works as intended. Scurry Away exists also, which is another thing. This is +1 modifier with any flee roll that you're doing. Scurrying Masses is quite cool here, right? So whilst within 3 inches of a friendly unit, this model gains a positive plus modifier to its leadership characteristic equal to the current rank bonuses up to a maximum of leadership of 10. So yeah, you can still kind of meme it and have loads of clan rats running around with leadership 10. Verminous Valor exists, and it's been changed slightly, so I'll read it properly. A character with a special rule that has joined a unit that has a unit strength of 10 or more may voluntarily retire to the rear of the unit at any time, moving through the ranks and taking up position away from combat. Should they do so, they are no longer within fighting rank and cannot make any attacks or have attacks directed to them. However, this unit may still use the character's leadership. So it's the same but also different because you need to have a certain unit strength now. Don't worry, we'll be starting the How to Play series very soon. And finally, we have Warpstone Weapons. A hand weapon carried by a model with a special rule has the magical attack special rule and armor piercing characteristic of -1. Again, pretty cool. Everything feels very much the same as the Skaven, to be honest. Magic has pretty much changed, and I'm not really too keen on this, as I've stated in a lot of the other videos. The Skaven used to have 2 unique laws of magic, and then 1 special spell, so that was the Law of Plague, and then obviously the Law of Ruin. Unfortunately, now we've only got the Law of the Horned Rat. Some iconic spells are there, though, but let's talk about the spells and the general laws that you can take with your other generic characters. So your Graciers can take Battle Magic, Demonology, Dark Magic, Elementalism, and Illusion. I mean, they're not bad laws, and they can be upgraded to level 4. Your Warlock Engineers can take Battle Magic or Elementalism and can be upgraded all the way up to level 2. And finally, the Plague Priests can take Battle Magic, Demonology, or Dark Magic. Again, not bad laws, but let's start looking towards the unique spells that we have with the Law of the Horned Rat. Some kind of iconic stuff is still here, which is nice, but we're missing some other ones, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So, first up, we've got Skitterleap. I mean, that's a pretty cool spell. It's a conveyance spell with a casting value of 8+ and a range of 18 inches. This spell can only target friendly characters whose troop type is infantry, but may target characters engaged in combat. You may immediately remove the target friendly character from the battlefield and replace it anywhere completely within 24 inches of its original location, but not within 6 inches of enemy models. The target cannot move again during this movement phase, which is perfectly fine, but the teleporting is there. I've actually got a little bit of a funny story. I once teleported a Gracier once away from combat, only to misfire with with my Rattling guns and yeah, kill it myself. It happens. Next, we've got Warp Lightning. This is a magic missile with a casting value of 10+ and a range of 18 inches. The target enemy unit suffers D3 + 1 strength 5 hits with an AP of -3. And finally, we have Cloud of Corruption, which is perhaps the most curious one. So, Magical Vortex. This is a casting value of 10+ and a range of 9 inches. It is a remains in play spell. Place a small 3-inch blast template so that its central hold is within the 9 inches of the caster. Whilst in play, the template is treated as dangerous terrain over which no line of sight can be drawn. Whilst within 3 inches of one or more of these templates, enemy units suffer a -1 modifier to their toughness characteristic to a minimum of 1. It's better. It actually sounds a lot better, and it definitely is like mixing a few spells into Cloud of Corruption. It kind of feels like Plague, but also turned into a template. I like it. I actually kind of like it. It just kind of feels weird losing out on some pretty iconic spells like, well, you know, the dreaded 13th spell, and Plague was a big one for me, but mind you, Plague was horrendously overpowered if you were lucky. So I can kind of understand that. It's just, you know, after playing Skaven for so long, because I've been playing Skaven since, oh god, I was 12 years old. I'm 31 now, by the way, at the time of recording this video, so, like, I've been playing Skaven for a long time. It's going to take some getting used to, I'll be very honest though, but overall, I mean, the Skaven still feel like Skaven. We do have to talk about a few things though. Alright, we have to talk about some missing stuff because it's a bit weird. I mean, no slaves is fine because, to be honest, they were stupid cheap and people would just kind of abuse them, and this is a game that is going to get abused very heavily. Like, seriously, you've seen that gyrocopter meme this by this point. It's a bit shame to lose out on the iconic unit though. Same thing with the Vermin Lords. I understand that Games Workshop is saying that demons aren't going to be that common and so on, and Vermin Lords are demons, but, like, we have some pretty Vermin Lords. It's a shame not to be able to use them. I myself have 13 of them, which are just going to stay on their Warhammer Fantasy bases, I guess, for display purposes. And it's a bit disappointing that they didn't decide, well, let's just give them the Forge World rules for Wolf Rats and so on, because Wolf Rats were fairly popular, so it's a bit disappointing. Mount options, it feels a little bit stripped down. We're going to talk about this in the pros and cons too, but, you know, we're missing out on the Plague Rat, we're missing out on the War Litter, which never had a model, but people would just make anyway, and yeah, you know, Bone Breakers, same thing, Brood Mothers, people have those models. It's a shame not to be able to use it. Now, we don't know if this means, because they've said, you know, that this is never going to be updated, but they could add some more units in the future, just, you know, not FAQ the stuff. And to be honest, with how the sales are going lately, I imagine that this actually might be a bit better off, and we might actually see an update to these factions, like, in 2nd or 3rd edition, should we ever get one for Old World. But, yeah. Like, it feels odd as a Skaven player. Maybe I'm just complaining because I've played Skaven for so long, but it just feels really kind of like missing out on a lot of fun stuff. But we're going to talk about the pros and cons, and yeah, I mean, the big thing to talk about is the element of randomness. The Skaven have a lot of elements of randomness. A lot of your weapons have misfire charts. That's still there. So you're not going to be playing Skaven to win. You're going to be playing Skaven for memory. You could easily do a lot of damage to your enemy armies, but you could also do damage to your own stuff. If you tailor your lists, you could be a bit more secure, so that's still entirely possible. And yeah, the Skaven still feel like the Skaven, which is a big thing. There are some missing iconic items though, so that's going to be a negative, mostly because, like, there's no Doom Rocket. At least I've not been able to see one. A lot of the other stuff is there though, like warp tokens. And, you know, the Blade of Nurglich and all that, but it's just like, where's my Doom Rocket, bro? But, yeah, I mean, you've got some pretty cool stuff. You've got the Banner of Clan Superiority too, which is great. It's not as powerful as it used to be, but it's still pretty decent. My only real issues really is the lack of unique spells. It's one of those things that have been for every single faction, and I'm going to keep mentioning it in every single faction, mostly because it just... I really wish it was full laws, and it would have been nice just to have pretty much every mount option back, but again, the Skaven feel like the Skaven. Even with the missing stuff, they still feel like they're fun and just unpredictable, good or bad. I am still going to be playing Skaven. I know they're not going to be getting support, but it's still the faction that I saw a box of those old school monkey clan rats. You remember those really looking interesting clan rats? And I tell you what, I still love them, and I'm still going to be fielding them. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Start a bit of a discussion. This is going to be a bit shorter, because really there's not a lot to talk about with the Skaven, but we've got a lot to come throughout pretty much the whole day today. So yeah, let's have some fun.